everybody for joining us, and cheers to our social distancing happy hour. I thought we'll do a quick whip around. If everybody could introduce themselves and their business and location, and then I'll introduce our guest for today. So can we start with you, Robbie?
Robbie Madden, William Road.
Lovely. And yourself, Tina?
Tina from Stonewell Cottages and Vineyards in the Barossa.
Thanks, Tina. Hi, Michelle. How are you going?
Hello. Am I muted? No.
No. If you could just introduce yourself, Michelle, to everyone else and let us know where you're from.
Yes, I'm from Yonder Beach House and our new property, Seafire Beach House.
Lovely. Hi, George. How are you going?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. George, did you just want to introduce yourself and let where you're from, please?
Yeah, George from the Boating Industry Association here in Adelaide.
Lovely. Thanks, George. Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Kelly Coon from Juggle House Experiences. I'm a tour operator based just out of Manning. Sun shining today.
It is. It's a glorious day, isn't it? It's blessed today, Kelly. Hi, Paul. How are you going?
Yeah, good. Paul Brown, Kangaroo Island Wilderness Tours, currently closed, and I'm in Adelaide.
Thanks for joining us again, Paul. Hi, Miriam.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I'm Miriam Griffin from Griffin's Marina Houseboats at Blanchetown, and we are also currently closed for hiring, unfortunately. But yeah, feeling confident about the future, which is really good.
Fabulous. That's great. Hi, Susan.
Hi. So I'm from Blinman and the Blinman Heritage Mine.
Thanks for joining us, Susan. How are you going today, Paul?
Paul Rees, yes.
Sorry,
Hi.
Paul
So
Rees, yes.
I wasn't sure if it was Paul Gordon or... Hello, yeah, my name's Paul Rees. I'm with the National Motor Museum in Birdwood and also the South Australian Maritime Museum in Port Adelaide, which are part of the History Trust of South Australia.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us
We're
today,
closed
Paul.
as well.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. And over to you next. So this gentleman with the suit jacket on, sorry, I can't see your first name.
My name is Moritz, is that what you mean?
Oh,
Can you hear
thank
me?
you.
Yeah, sorry. The computer set up, I think, only with my last name. I'm from the Playford Hotel and Gallery by Sofitel here in Adelaide. Still open, very low occupancies, but we're still trading.
Lovely. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that knowledge. Rain, thanks for joining us, Rain.
It's Renee. But
Renee,
that's okay.
oh, sorry, my apologies.
I assumed that was me. I'm from Emu Bay Holiday Homes on Kangaroo Island, and we're completely closed at this stage.
Yeah, thank you. Hi again, Caroline.
Hi, sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm from Diverse Travel, inbound tour operator based in Adelaide.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa. How are you going?
Good. I took the wine seriously, so I've got my wine.
Fabulous.
I'm with TAFE, and we're closed for students at the moment, gearing up for online starting on the 27th.
Oh, great. Absolutely. Fabulous. Great to have them still engaged. Hi, Trina.
Hi. I'm also from TAFE.
Thanks for joining us, ladies, today. I appreciate that. And we've got a couple of other people joined as well, but we cannot see them. So feel free to pop some details about yourself in the group chat for everybody to see where you're from and your names as well. So for the people we can't see. So I just want to say thanks again for everybody for joining us. If we could just ask everybody, it sounds like most people have, to press mute, and then we can table any questions in the chat function just to help this manage the Zoom call just to be managed seamlessly. That would be fabulous. Thank you. I I'm so pleased to introduce Paul Gordon to be joining us today. Paul is from Wallmans Lawyers, and many of you members would know Wallmans have been a valued partner to us at TIC-SA and a long-time supporter of the tourism industry. And today, Paul is bringing a wealth of knowledge to us to further discuss contracts and business issue. And I know it has been a key topic with many members, particularly refunds, dealing with suppliers, and I know in that area of online travel agents as well. So thank you, Paul, for joining us. And I'll throw it over to Paul. If everybody could flick their any questions through the chat, it's really organic. So raise any questions. If you could pop it in the group chat and we can work through those seamlessly as Paul starts his discussion with us. Over to you, Paul.
Great, thank you so much. First of all, can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. I shouldn't ask that when everyone's muted, but thank you very much for confirming. The thumbs up is an amazing form of communication. Firstly, I just want to express my thoughts with you all in the industry. First, with those of you impacted by the bushfires, and secondly, by the pandemic. It's obviously an incredibly challenging time, and if there's anything that I or anyone at Wallmans can do to help you out, please let us know. We are 100% committed to the tourism industry, and where we can help, we will. I haven't prepared a massive long presentation today because my thought was it would be probably a little bit more valuable to take your questions, get an idea of what the issues you're facing actually are, rather than talking about things which might be completely irrelevant. I do need to say, this is just the little lawyer disclaimer at the beginning, that what I'm providing today is of a general nature only, and whilst I am asking you for your issues, I won't have considered the breadth of circumstance that might affect your particular circumstance. In the event you do have a more detailed issue, or you'd like to bring anything up with us and would like some actual tailored advice, TIC-SA members are entitled to our first port of call service, which is a free 15-minute phone call with anyone in our firm. So you're welcome to take advantage of that. And then we can also help you out on a broader basis if necessary. So that's the, I guess, admin / disclaimer stuff out of the way. The pandemic has been raising a variety of different issues across a bunch of legal areas, some of which I personally practice in, others which my colleagues do, and I've got enough of a broad understanding to hopefully give you some idea about most of them. And if I can't, I'll take questions on notice and get back to you with information from those who can, I guess, give a more expert opinion. The main areas that this has been affecting are contracts and business operations, so refunds, frustration, force majeure, these kinds of random legal concepts that you put in a document and never expect to use, but have suddenly become on vogue. We also are seeing it in terms of remote work. So if you have any employees or staff members and they are working remotely, there are some privacy law issues that you might need to be aware of. We're also seeing in terms of workplace health and safety of people working from home. If you're a sole operator, then those are going to be less relevant to you, but there are still issues in relation to how you manage people's information. We're seeing customer complaints and refunds as being a pretty significant challenge that people are raising. That relates back to the force majeure and contract elements. And then also having things signed. So I'm not sure if any of you have any needs to verify people's identity or getting documents signed. That can be another element which is challenging, because normally where you would have someone sign in front of a JP or a lawyer, it's no longer quite as easy to do that. So all of these different issues are bubbling away, and then we add to that the taxation and financial issues that arise from the government's JobKeeper and JobSeeker entitlements that might be of a lot of interest to some of you, particularly sole traders, in that if you're shut down at the moment, you might be able to access some of those. And so there's this whole whirlwind of different legal issues that arise. I'm not sure if we want want to jump straight to, oh, sorry, no, just seeing there are a couple of questions, but I guess the other thing that we need to look at is the bans that have been put in place. The bans that have been put in place are very important because they will inform other elements that we're talking about today. So for example, whether or not the government has simply advised people not to do something versus mandated that they can't will dictate whether or not you can rely upon, or your clients can rely upon, a force majeure clause, for example. It might determine whether or not you can stand down employees without paying them, or if you are required to give them work in accordance with their contract. So that's going to be really important, and because it is a moving feast and things are changing every couple of days, if not every couple of hours, that's going to be another significant impact on you. A lot of what we're talking about is going to depend upon the precise terms of contracts, and I'll go into that in a moment as to why that's the case. And so if you are dealing with people through external parties such as third-party travel agent websites, your booking.com or Expedia sort of options, then you may have to deal not only with the law, but with the contracts that you sign up to when you allow bookings through those services. So I'm just going to outline a couple of basic concepts for you initially, and then we'll move to questions once we've done that. The first of those is the concept of frustration. Frustration is a concept that comes into play when you have a contract with someone and it becomes permanently impossible for you to comply with the obligations under the contract or for the other side to do that. So we're not talking about a temporary disruption. So let's say the pandemic's happening now and someone's booked accommodation at my bed and breakfast. That's to say that it can't happen right now, but there's nothing to say that it couldn't happen down the track. And so there would be a reasonable argument to say that the contract there has not been frustrated because it may be possible for it to be performed later down the track. By contrast, let's say that you were running, so we've got Backyard Universe here, so let's say that there was a particular astrological event and it was only going to happen once every 50 years. And because of the pandemic, it was not possible for the stargazing to occur. That would definitely be frustrated. Whilst you could say, well, it's going to come around another 50 years' time, so we'll hold on to your ticket fees till then. I think in reality, if it's not possible for the contract to be performed in a reasonable period of time, then you would have an argument for frustration. Frustration applies to any contract. It is a common law remedy, so that means that it's not actually something that needs to be written into the document. There's also some statutes and some legislation that deals with it. And it entitles either party to be released from the contract without penalty. Normally, when the contract is frustrated, the parties will then be required to decide amongst themselves how you share the loss. So it's not going to give you an immediate entitlement to a refund from a client, but the parties need to negotiate amongst themselves, okay, how are we going to spread this loss? If you can't decide, then you go to the courts and the courts will say either, okay, we're going to split this 50-50 or whatever it is. But that's what frustration does. What a lot of people are talking about these days, though, is force majeure. Now, force majeure is only a thing if it is in your contract. If you do not have a contract, or if you have a contract and it does not have a force majeure clause, it is not possible to rely upon it. And every force majeure clause is different. Sorry, Lisa, do you mind putting your mic on mute? It's just coming through a little bit. Great. So if you have a force majeure clause in your contract, what it will generally say is that if a force majeure event occurs, and that's normally an act of God, so something like a pandemic, a plague, natural disaster, etc., or it could be things like wars or quarantines and things like that, then the contract is paused. So for the period of the force majeure event, neither party will be held liable for failing to complete their contractual obligations. So let's say we've got my bed and breakfast, someone's booked in, pandemic comes in, they can't get here from Melbourne or Sydney. They might be able to say, well, I shouldn't be held accountable for my obligation to pay you for my accommodation because I can't get there due to an event outside of my control. If that occurs, normally a force majeure clause will say that for the period of time when they are unable to perform, they will be released from their obligations, and then once the event completes, everything's back on. So we need to rebook the accommodation. Some force majeure clauses say that if the force majeure event continues for a specified period of time, then you treat it as if it's frustrated. Either party can terminate. But in every case, this is going to depend upon your contract or your terms and conditions, because, as I said at the beginning, it is a contractual remedy, not something that's implied into every contract. Now, in either case, whether or not there is in fact a force majeure event will depend upon the circumstances. So if, for example, we have the government currently in South Australia outlawing gatherings of more than 10 people, but not necessarily gatherings of more than 2 people, even though the federal government has come out and said that that is what they would like, and someone wanting to use that as an excuse, well, if it is not in fact prohibited by law, then you may be able to insist upon performance of the contract. So my couple who wanted to come and honeymoon at my bed and breakfast say, yes, we could come and stay there, but we're just not comfortable with it because of the pandemic. That is not going to entitle them to either frustration or force majeure because it's not actually preventing them from taking part in whatever service provision you're offering. So I should note that is from a legal perspective, not from a public relations perspective. And so it may be that whilst legally you could force them to come and stay at your bed and breakfast or pay you the cost of doing so, query whether or not the Facebook messaging that's going to come up after that is going to be overly favourable. So with all of these things, I'm giving you the legal side of it, but also keep in mind there's the practical, pragmatic and marketing side of things as well. On that, why don't we move to a few questions? If there's anything that arises from that. Let's see. So I'm just going to read through. So some.
I'm just going to jump in here, Michael, because I've just seen Michelle's question and I responded just trying to get a bit of information about people moving and travelling in through the SA regions, particularly over Easter. So we basically, we haven't been, you know, there's nothing that's been legislated. Basically, police are strongly encouraging all residents to stay at home, and what they'll be doing, what we've heard they will be doing, is basically license checks. They're just asking everybody to stay at home. But in relation to if there's going to be any penalties or fines introduced, I haven't seen any messaging. We've had a quick look on the SAPOL website. We haven't seen, and I've just had a quick message through to Sean as well, but we haven't seen any messages to say if they are or they're not. So we can't confirm or deny if there's going to be any fines, but they're strongly encouraging everybody to stay at home, and they'll be doing some license checks. So that is what we know to our knowledge. I hope that is helpful. Just to clear that question that's going through the feed there, guys. Anybody else got any other questions? If you've got a question, feel free to unmute and have a quick chat to Paul. Otherwise, like I mentioned, put it in the group chat function on the side panel as well. I'll throw it over to anybody.
This is just a really quick one. It's I know this sounds weird, but we had business interruption here, and in the policy, of course, it says about the if it's from a pandemic or at the quarantine law of 2005, in the down in the deep of it. If also it does say if there's anyone else that other insurance company that is actually going, approving the policy, they will then approve ours. If I'm trying to make sense what I'm trying to say. Like they'll cover us if they can find someone else that has a policy that's covering them. So if there's anyone out there that is being covered by business interruption, it'd be wonderful to know. Just a quick one. Being a lawyer, I thought you never know, you might hear of something.
So
we have business protection insurance through elders, and there is a clause that does not cover. So no, sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's quite an interesting move to say, oh, we will do it if someone else does. At the end of the day, your insurance cover should come down to the specific policy word. If it says that it will respond in the case of pandemic, you should absolutely be covered. If it says it doesn't respond in case of pandemic, then unfortunately you won't be.
Hold 1 sec, I'll just tell you. It's really funny, interesting, because it says, if any other policy insuring the same events and for which the insurers have admitted liability or would have admitted liability if it was not for the application of the excess, they will cover it. And what it is it's why they're saying any quarantinable disease as the term is defined in the Quarantine Act of 1908 and any subsequent amendments or highly, yeah. But the thing is that quarantine term of 1908 doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So, but I think
Robbie,
yeah.
Robbie, we've been working on our business interruption insurance because of the bushfires.
Yeah.
And the pandemic has actually stopped any claim against the bushfires. So when it transfers out of the effects of the bushfires and into pandemic, then that voids our claim. So sorry, that's not great news, but that's our understanding of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah. So look, that's one of the ones where if you want me to have a quick look and have a 15-minute phone call about the policy wording, more than happy to take that one offline. But yeah, without seeing it and going through all of the definitions and various elements, it's quite hard to.
I just wondered if anyone, if anyone hears of anyone that was covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Power of community, isn't it, Robbie? Absolutely. Here, Paul, I've seen a question here from Lisa on the chat. So basically, she's been approached by Ray White Real Estate for short-term rental. Are there many downsides? There are many downsides for her. Curious around the legal issues. They're saying 3 to 6 month rental, then I could go back to her B&B operations normal after this. Has anybody else, ventured into this area? Paul, do you have any sort of advice in the legal issues in relation to this as well?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that property law is not my strongest suit, but I'm more than happy to get some general thoughts. In terms of the provision of short-term rental, so 3 to 6 months as opposed to, for example, your standard Airbnb sort of thing. There is I'm very hesitant to take anything more than 6 months. And the reason is that once you go beyond 6 months, you will have additional obligations under the Residential Tenancies Act. And so that's going to be probably your biggest challenge, is that once you go to a short-term rental rather than holiday accommodation, we're moving to a different piece of legislation, what you would normally otherwise be dealing with. There are going to be additional obligations. And the question that I'd really be asking at this point in time is, how are you going to handle the government changes to leasing laws that say that if someone doesn't make payment of their residential tenancy, you can't evict them? What if someone decides to just not pay? That would be probably my biggest concern with that at the moment. I would suggest there's quite a bit of literature out there about those recent changes to the leasing laws. that's one I think would be worth speaking to a property person about in a bit more detail before you jump on board.
Thanks for that, Paul. Paul Rees has got a question. Paul, do you just want to unmute yourself and have a quick share your question with Paul, Gordon, and the rest of our callers? Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, Paul, thank you. I guess I've got a question, but I'm not sure if it really is a question. I just wanted you to maybe expand on something that you touched on. I have got, everyone's got unique problems and issues that they're looking at. One of mine is going to be the Beta Birdwood, which is due for September 27. We're 90% subscribed. Fantastically, nobody's asked for a refund yet. And we're holding on to the date with dear life, and maybe it'll go in at the end of September or November. But I was interested in, you alluded to, you prefaced your advice saying it's illegal and it doesn't take into consideration public relations. Can you just expand on any more around that? Because that's a really interesting area as far as how not to get ourselves into a legal spot by handling public relations better earlier. Sorry about the dog. Sorry.
That's all good. My dog's being surprisingly quiet. So in any event, in terms of what I was referring to there, is that you may be able to make the hard-nosed decision to say, you know what, we're not going to provide any refunds because we are simply rescheduling the event. You can't make it too bad. That would be potentially legally open to you. So if you, for example, had to move the Beta Birdwood to January, and there's a bunch of people who that is not convenient for, the fact that it's not convenient doesn't necessarily mean that they would be able to claim that the contract had been frustrated. And so on that basis, you could legally say, not giving you anything back. However, if you are saying that as a blanket policy and you've got a little old lady who's been saving up for the last 10 years to get her ticket to the Beta Birdwood, and suddenly she can't make it anymore because she's confined to a nursing home, I think you would find that challenging from a public relations perspective. On the flip side, if you start giving out refunds to try and assist with public relations, but then aren't consistent with that, then someone might be able to claim that you have varied your terms and conditions and then demand that you persist with that behaviour. So I think consistency is going to be appropriate. If you are going to do selective refunds, I would suggest that you have a very clear policy to say that it's being done in cases of, for example, hardship, and that will be assessed on a case-by-case basis according to certain criteria or something like that, but making sure that it's very clear how you are varying your terms and what rigour is being applied. And it's never going to be perfect, but that's really what I was referring to there, was in relation to the fact that following the legal option might not be in your best interest from a marketing perspective.
Thanks, Paul. Tina, did you want to have a chat to Paul about your question in relation to booking.com and changing that for that policy, some of those conditions?
Yeah, Paul, what we found with booking.com is initially they had the force majeure policy when they first released, and the issue was just in China. So their force majeure policy just related to travellers unable to come from China. As the virus spread, they kept on adding more and more countries on the line to their force majeure policy. I had a situation with a booking that was from the Philippines, a 9-night booking that was meant to come on the 30th of March. At that point, when they asked to cancel, the Philippines was not actually on booking.com's list of countries that qualified under this force policy. I had a big long conversation with booking.com about it, with 3 conversations with different people from booking.com, and they eventually admitted to me that no, was not obliged to provide a refund at that point in time. So I went back to the guest and said, no, there's no refund, but you can change your date with no restrictions and no penalties. The guest was not happy with that and went back to booking.com and said, no, we're not happy with that. We want a refund. Booking.com came back to me and I said, well, that's not what we're doing. We're offering change of dates. And they said, well, no, you have to provide a refund. This booking is worth close to $1,000. So it's big. And then I said, okay, well, what will happen if I just don't refund that guest? And they said, well, booking.com will send you an invoice. So I've since then had a conversation. The guest has called me again and again has demanded a refund. So what do I do?
Yeah. Now, I must admit, I've looked at a few different online travel agent terms and conditions. I haven't looked at booking.com's recently. Yeah. So the first thing I'll couch this in is saying it'll depend upon the contract.
Yeah.
I would assume from the others that I've reviewed that it will be highly one-sided to booking.com. It's highly possible that they have a clause in there which basically says, for the avoidance of doubt, if we decide you have to refund, you have to refund. Now, there may well be ways around that, even if it's in the contract, because there is a principle of unfair standard form contract terms that applies in Australia under the Competition and Consumer Act. Now, Booking.com and the other internationals, if they're doing business in Australia, then we are able to hold them to that. And in a lot of cases, not in every case, but in many cases. And so what we would be doing is writing back to them and saying, okay, firstly, at the time at which this booking was seeking to be cancelled, there was no force majeure event. Secondly, the force majeure clause, if it extends beyond that, does not provide, is not fair and therefore should be struck out. And if you don't cease and desist, then we will simply, we're not going to pay and you're welcome to sue us, but we will have a counterclaim for a breach of the Competition and Consumer Act. So that's basically the pathway you might want to look at. As I said, it will depend upon a variety of features. The only other thing to consider, though, is how important is Booking.com to you in the future? Because if they say that they're, that's fine, we won't require a refund, but we're also not going to list you anymore, is that going to be, it's a balancing act, and when the other side has a lot of money and power, it makes it very challenging.
Yeah. Yes, that's right, Paul. I guess I probably resigned myself to the fact that I'm just going to have to pay that one back obviously it's a PR thing, and also, we don't really want Booking.com to delist us because we obviously do still want that partnership, even though it's a very one-sided partnership. I had another example yesterday with a booking from Expedia, from America, then due to come in May. Expedia's force majeure policy is only for with stay dates prior to April the 30th. So theoretically, I wouldn't have to refund her because she's coming in May, but she has come back to me and said, look, they're in their 70s and they really don't think that they are ever going to be able to come to Australia. Now, they won't be able to do their big Australia trip. So I guess that comes under then the frustration law, that really where realistically they're elderly, they're now very fearful to travel and the risk of travel is very great for them. So it's probably not fair to expect them to say, yep, okay, we'll come at another time. Is that right?
That's right. I think, look, you could take a more hard-nosed approach and say, well, as long as they are medically fit to fly, too bad. I think that the PR, that's the classic PR problem that I would be very hesitant about taking a hard line on. The other thing that I will mention with all of this is that force majeure clauses only apply where the force majeure event was not in the contemplation of the parties at the time. And why I raise that is that let's say that someone booked with you tomorrow for travel in May. I think it would be very challenging for them to rely upon frustration or force majeure, because we don't know when this thing is going to end. If they've made the decision to make a booking, that's on them.
And actually, Paul, Booking.com have lifted their force majeure policy now, because they're basically saying from any bookings made from the start of April or something or other. From the 6th of April, I think they said, force majeure policy will not apply anymore because people are well aware of the risks associated now, and so that if they suddenly can't travel, they won't be able to claim that force majeure. That will no longer apply for any new bookings made from, I think they said, the 6th of April. So it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Tina, and thanks, Paul, for going into that great conversation there and going into some level of depth. I know a lot of operators have been faced some challenges, particularly through the online travel agents and terms and conditions around their bookings. So you're definitely not alone on that. Some of the challenges people were hearing, Tina. Michelle, you had a question you wanted to ask Paul. Feel free to take yourself off of mute and have a conversation.
Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. Yes, that was really interesting. Thank you. And Paul, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes. Yep.
This is as far as, learning about what to do in the... can you hear me all right? Because I've got a very unstable thing on. Quick question. If you are giving, not refunds, but if you are letting some people or people move their holiday on, how much further on is reasonable? I'm assuming, because when if you've got an accommodation and you've given up, for example, Easter, and you give somebody 4 nights somewhere down the line, you're in fact lost 8 nights, So I don't want to be giving people holidays until the end of whenever. Is it reasonable to say the end of 2020, or is there some legislation that says you have to take it a year, or what?
No, there's no legislative requirements there at all. Once again, if it was in your contract, then that's one thing. If it isn't in your contract and this is a temporary thing as it is, then I think that you are just being generous by offering them a rebooking in any event, and you can put whatever limit on that you like. I can't see any issue whatsoever with you saying that rebookings are available until December 2020 or whenever. Or you could even say within 6 months of the end of the declaration of a pandemic.
Okay, cool.
Whatever you want to do in that respect, I think is absolutely fine.
Thank you. I think it's interesting too, I hadn't thought before, that you might treat new bookings, as the lady before was saying, what would be a reasonable date? When did we all know about it? Like a lot of the grants and stuff and government stuff's going back to the 1st of March. So we all knew about it in March, didn't we?
Yes.
So if you booked anything from the 1st of March, then on your head be it, probably.
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Michelle, I've also just seen the Backyard Universe. They put in our chat earlier that they've, extending all their gift vouchers as well.
And so with the Backyard Universe, I do apologise for saying astrological. I'm not sure it's astronomological, or I'm not sure what the correct term is, but I do apologise for the unintentional misstatement. Astronomical, of course, astronomical.
Does anybody else want to take this opportunity to have a quick chat to Paul, or a topic that they might want to raise and get some feedback for the rest of the members on here? Yeah, this is a great time to do it. Otherwise, like Paul mentioned, Wallmans Lawyers are a wonderful partner of TICSA and offer a complimentary advice line. So you definitely can take a conversation offline with one of their team as well. Yeah, over to you, Miriam. Have a chat.
Thank you. I've been fortunate that a lot of my bookings I have managed to defer, and obviously all of my Easter bookings apart from one will actually have already booked it for next Easter. But as Michelle said, technically then my chance of getting more money for next Easter are obviously dimmed immediately, but that's okay. But everyone else who haven't actually got a date yet, I've said, look, I'll hold it in credit. Do I then have an obligation to put that again in writing, because a lot of it's just been verbal, obviously, in a few emails, so that I'm then protected from them coming saying in 6 months' time, actually, we don't actually want that credit anymore. We want our money back. So obviously, I've just got verbal contracts at the moment with this deferment. What can I put in writing to just make sure I am covered, so I'm not going to suddenly have, you know, in 6 months' time, $20,000 worth of bookings suddenly being demanded back?
Yeah, look, I think that you've got a couple of issues there. I think having it in writing would be 100% recommended. Firstly, in terms of the protecting yourself from any issues, but secondly, what happens, heaven forbid, you know, touch every bit of wood I can find, but if you became insolvent, do they become creditors? And how's that going to be managed? If you have it all verbally, then that doesn't help anyone. So my strong suggestion would be to do that. You probably also need to then account for it in your books as being, in terms of it being, you know, prepayment for services received, just to make sure that you've got that all clearly listed in your financials. So I think that, you know, definitely have it in writing, put some conditions around it. So, you know, you've got this amount of credit which will expire in whatever period of time. You know, are there any limitations on their use? Can they, if they hadn't booked for Easter, can they now book for Easter next year? If they do they have to pay a supplement to deal with those more popular dates? You know, those kinds of questions that are what you need to think about in your terms and conditions of this. So I would recommend having something in writing, absolutely. And ideally getting them to confirm by reply email.
Right. Thank you very much for that. That's sort of what I was expecting, and I'm hoping most will, a lot of them are long-term clients, so I'm feeling quite comfortable. But I, you know, now I've got through that initial, you know, having to make all those decisions and cancel and defer bookings, I now want to protect what I have got, and I thought that would probably be the case. So thank you for that. And obviously too with the financials, actually I've already spoken to the accountant, and so where we've had open invoices where we've deferred, obviously I've received full payments, that's obviously been invoiced now. But where there's still some balances owing, we've now changed that to an open invoice, so that then that invoice will be drawn when the payments are actually received. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Anybody else got some questions? I can just see there's still some messaging happening on the group chat, which I'm just happy to let that go organically. It's great that everybody can, one of the great purposes of us coming together like this is just sharing our knowledge and sharing our experiences with each other. But feel free if you want to have a conversation about this and open it up, taking yourselves off of mute, guys, unless there's any other topics someone wants to have a chat to Paul about.
Out of interest, does anyone have employees who are working from home, or is it all just shut down?
It's just me, Paul.
Yep.
Lovely.
Sorry, Kathy, I think you're on mute still.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. What about at the hotel? What are you guys doing with your employees in the city there? Have you guys got staff still working, or I'm sure you've got a bit of 50-50. Have you got any of your staff working from home?
No, there's nobody working from home for us. We try to stay connected with them as well. So most of the marketing team is on stand down. Only the director of sales is for 2 days, but I like to come in here so we can connect and talk about the business. Yeah, so there's nobody working from home. There's a lot of people home. We had to stand down about 130 staff, which is a lot. But hopefully with the new JobKeeper, when that kicks in, we can have a few back at least for a couple of days to stay connected and do some work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hoping to bring some more detail on the JobKeeper package next week. In next week's Zoom call, we'll connect with Hood Sweeney again. We'll let all the dust settle on the announcements that have come with the JobKeeper yesterday, since it's been passed through Parliament, and hopefully we can give everybody a bit more clarity on that one. Is there any more questions anybody wants to throw out to Paul? Otherwise, I will wrap it up. As I mentioned before, yeah, that's great. You've got lots of questions about JobKeeper, Tina, and yeah, we look forward to hopefully helping you out with that one next week. But also feel free to, Hood Sweeney do connect with that complimentary service offer as well to our members as well. So please don't hesitate to be in touch if you need them. But yeah, guys, all I have to say is, first of all, thanks to Paul for joining us today. And I know a lot of people have had some queries in these areas, so please don't hesitate to take any of these conversations offline, not only with Paul, but they've got an amazing team at Wallmans to help with all sorts of issues, if that's around liquor licensing, employment, the contracts area that Paul specialises in as well. So feel free, and I will flick an email out to everybody on conclusion of this in the next couple of hours with the all the contact details if you wanted to have some conversations and engage with anybody of the team at Wallmans. So thanks, guys, for spending your Thursday afternoon with us, and I'm going to give you a cheers. We really know everybody's dealing with these challenges, but some are really, really doing it tough. So, and this is what TIC-SA was created for, to help support our members in times like this. Core advocacy is one of our real purposes, and it's at its highest relevance at the moment. You guys might have seen in some communications Emily and Sean sent out yesterday that Sean is representing you guys, us, our members, on the Premier's Industry and Response Council. So please don't hesitate to be in touch with him if you've got any issues you want to table around the support and recovery of the tourism industry. Like he said in his email to you guys, please don't hesitate to be in touch. But I really love connecting with you guys every week. It's definitely one of my highlights, just to be able to see and have our wonderful community connect. It's just, yeah, it's definitely one of my highlights. So guys, thanks. Continue to take care, keep safe. Let's support each other. Have a happy Easter. Cheers.